This video contains some spoilers for both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You've been warned. So around the time the Nintendo Switch came out, and with it Breath of the Wild, I wasn't gaming a whole lot. Just a mix of school and life got me out of the hobby temporarily. But when I found out Nintendo was making an open world Zelda game, I was like,
What? What the fuck?
See, The Legend of Zelda is one of my favorite series, if not absolute favorite series of all time. From a very young age, I was enthralled by the sense of adventure, the diverse set pieces and landmarks, and the epic mythos and stories that surround it. And now you're telling me I can experience all that while going anywhere, whenever I want? Count me in. One of the most memorable scenes in any video game for me was walking out of the Shrine of Resurrection and seeing the absolute scale of Breath of the Wild's world. The Great Plateau did an absolutely fantastic job teaching the game mechanics and setting the stage for the rest of the game. I remember very clearly climbing up the Temple of Time, thinking to myself, wow, this is just one of probably hundreds of different looking and diverse assets scattered around the map. I can't wait to see all the other cool locales. Oh, sweet winter child. As soon as I jumped off the Great Plateau, I had a sense of post-paraglider clarity. Everything was just so empty. I was pretty much just like,
Is this it?
Prior to this, in my mind, I was imagining Twilight Princess dungeons littered throughout the map, with the more open and free backdrop as a means to get to those places. Just like how Hyrule Field or the Great Sea in older Zelda games was an exploratory step to the more detailed and intricately designed regions. When I was going through the Great Plateau, I thought it was just an appetizer to a more elaborate world. Instead, it was just one piece to a thematically consistent puzzle. To say this was crushing is an understatement. My story with Breath of the Wild is one of expectation setting, and it was so far away from the Elden Ring-like experience I thought I was going to get. I know there's been many claims that the emptiness of Breath of the Wild is what makes it great, namely in that discovering things in a barren world makes them so much sweeter to find. But what were those things I was discovering? Shrines that all look the same? Korok seeds? Side quests that were nothing but copy and paste fetch quests? A bland and uninspiring story? And I'm just going to be straight up, I did not like the Divine Beast at all. When I think of Zelda, I think of walking into the Great Deku Tree for the first time, the mask quest in Majora, the Tower of the Gods, the battle on the Bridge of Elden, intricately designed set pieces and quests. The closest thing I got to this in Breath of the Wild was the Yiga Clan hideout, a legitimate quest, and obviously Hyrule Castle at the end. But unfortunately, these small slivers of gold were not enough to make up for the sheer disappointment I was feeling. My entire experience with Breath of the Wild was one filled with despair. I played the entire game waiting to be blown away, and never got the life-changing experience I was dreaming of. But just like someone you love can break your heart, I don't think Breath of the Wild is a bad game by any stretch. I have to hand it to how Nintendo made their engine, and the systems around it. Finding shrines to boost health or stamina, while also acting as fast travel points was brilliant. Towers that acted as gliding points made exploring a lot of fun. Being able to climb pretty much everything while tinkering with the chemistry system was ingenious. They really knocked it out of the park by making me feel like I was in the wild, especially in the early game, as I had to cook my own food, map out my destinations with limited stamina, and save my weapons so they don't break. But still, the 7 out of 10 experience for me was very different from the 10 billion I was expecting, and I definitely felt a sense of sadness and ignorance for letting myself get as hype as I did. But I had hope. Just like how Nintendo made a new engine from the ground up in Ocarina of Time, and used those assets and systems in a new and creative way in Majora's Mask, I felt like Nintendo could do something special with the next game. The entire time I played Breath of the Wild, I felt like it was a tech demo for something greater, and knowing how Nintendo never rests on its laurels, I just knew that the next game might be something great. And for once in my life, I was right. Now that I'm significantly older and hopefully more mature than when Breath of the Wild came out, I made sure to be conscious with my hype levels for Tears of the Kingdom. I remember feeling cautiously optimistic when I saw the Ultra Hand demo, and then actually testing out the new abilities in the Great Sky Islands showed me that the new gameplay wasn't a gimmick. The first sense I got that Tears was different was when I jumped down to Lookout Landing. It just felt so much more alive and vibrant than Breath of the Wild ever was. But it wasn't until I got to my first dungeon, the Fire Temple, that I went like, This is what I wanted all this time. Everything I yearned for with Breath of the Wild came true. There was finally an ounce of depth to the content that Breath of the Wild was sorely lacking. See, Breath of the Wild definitely had stuff to do, but what was there was pretty bland in my opinion. Tears of the Kingdom not only puts a whole lot of meat on that bone, but also serves an entirely new platter of ideas and things to do. Firstly, I want to discuss the story as it serves as the backdrop for the adventure at large. Much of the story is still fragmented like Breath of the Wild, but it has a much more epic undertone than Breath, namely in how it taps more into the Zelda mythos, while also being a more exciting story in general. The geoglyphs acting as landmarks to get story beats is a much more accessible way to get cutscenes than the picture system in Breath, but the cutscenes themselves actually made me hyped to see what was happening behind the scenes. While it doesn't reach the same highs as something like Skyward Sword or Majora's Mask, I was genuinely looking forward to get more story, which is more than I can say for Breath of the Wild. While the main quests were a lot better than before, what I was particularly fond of were the side adventures. A level up from side quests, these actually had some story and cool elements to them, which were by far better than just the side quests Breath of the Wild gave. But as I said, it was the temples that put the nail in the coffin in any post-Breath of the Wild heartbreak I was feeling. While these can't hold a candle next to something like the Forest Temple or Arbiter's Grounds, the quests leading up to them, and the dungeons and boss fights themselves, were a lot of fun, and was exactly the handcrafted, thematically relevant content I was hoping for over half a decade. And let's not forget the Sky Islands, the caves, and oh, did I forget to mention there was a freaking second Hyrule Underground? We went from a Costco sample to an all-you-can-eat buffet from one game to another. If all these locations and quests were present in Breath of the Wild, it would have been the game that I was dreaming for back then. But in a post-Elden Ring world, the sheer amount of serviceable content alone isn't enough to put a game in the upper echelon. But this is Nintendo we're talking about. If exploration was the one word that could describe Breath of the Wild, experimentation is that for Tears of the Kingdom. But it also misses out on the fact that exploration breeds experimentation in this game. Videos covering the brilliance of Ultra Hand and Fuse have been done to death, but I want to talk about the brilliance of the loop that makes them so much fun to use. Simply put, you explore the caves of Hyrule to find Bright Bloom seeds, you use those Bright Blooms to explore the depths to find Zonite, you turn that Zonite into crystallized charges, and those charges into energy wells to upgrade your battery, and then you go to the Sky Islands to get parts from Zonite dispensers so you can actually put your battery to good use, and let your imagination run wild. And that's just the Zonite loop. Never mind the fact that you can fuse anything to a weapon, arrow, or shield, creating endless possibilities only feasible if you explore the diverse regions of the map. Now I'm actively looking for Korok seeds left and right because I want to have as many diverse weapons as possible, just as much for curiosity's sake as for being battle ready. Again, there's no point in me talking about the limitless creative potential Fuse and Ultra Hand afford the players, but it's the fact that Nintendo managed to not only make serviceable content in Tears that I thought was missing in the previous game, but to use that content as a means to reward the player's creativity that makes Tears of the Kingdom one of the best games I've ever played. However many pieces my heart broke into, Raru's right arm ultra-handed it back into completion. Thank you, Nintendo. Thank you for making not just one of my favorite games of all time, but quite possibly my favorite Zelda game ever. Though I should play the CGI games before I can definitively say that. I have no idea what the future of Zelda holds, though I know we're not going to find out for quite some time, especially given that Team Red needs his new 3D outing on the Super Switch. Whatever the case, I'm going to be satisfied playing this game for a long, long time coming. Stay curious, my friends.